She never just walked into a room. She swept into it. She made an entrance. Heads turned and people stared as the always impeccably dressed Kaye Rowe gave her public what they wanted. A local celebrity with the charm, the poise, and the wardrobe to dazzle even the hardest of souls. But perhaps her most noteworthy brush with greatness stemmed from an accoutrement the glamorous Mrs. Rowe was rarely without: a hat. Born in Winnipeg, it wasn't long before Rowe began making a name for herself in Manitoba's provincial capital and beyond. Drama and the spoken arts were an especial passion for her, and her diction and enunciation, coupled with her commanding yet dulcet tone, were envied by many. She won scholarships and awards for her acting abilities, and although she led many organizations and adjudicated dozens of speech festivals, she was known by most as a newspaper reporter. Her career began as a correspondent for the Winnipeg Free Press, but when she moved to the Wheat City, she joined the Brandon Sun as a freelance columnist in 1945. And almost immediately, a legend was born. Her column, entitled People Watching, covered everything from travel to famous people, from livestock to local people. In her own words, "My subjects range from listing the winning animals at the Provincial X and walking in the Valley of the Kings in Iran, to writing obituaries for strangers who phone and weep and beg me to write for them." Rowe and her husband, G.R., a Brandon principal, had no children but were renowned for their beautiful homes, for throwing lavish dinner parties, and for enjoying the finer things in life. One of the friends with whom they socialized was Brandon Sun owner and publisher Louis D. Whitehead. And when Rowe mentioned she'd love to cover the big fashion shows in New York City, Whitehead offered to send her. And he did, again and again and again. Rowe, always impeccably dressed, brought news of the latest fashions in the Big Apple back to the streets of Brandon. With such engaging headlines as "How to Give Mass-Market Clothes the Couturier Look," Rowe won the hearts and loyalty of Brandon women eager to sport the hot new looks in their small prairie town. Pizzazz and panache were Rowe's bywords, and atop her stylish outfits, she almost always sported a hat. Bedecked with feathers, bows, or flowers, and always of the highest quality, Rowe was the first and last word on hats in Brandon. And it was her passion for chapeaux that snagged Rowe a brief interview that was perhaps the crowning achievement of her extensive career. On one of her few visits to the Wheat City, Queen Elizabeth II was thronged by dignitaries and national reporters when, much to the dismay of her security detail, Her Majesty made a beeline for Kaye Rowe. The two chatted for quite some time, and later, when asked why she'd stopped to converse with the Sun reporter, the Queen replied, "Because I liked her hat." Rowe was the only female the Queen spoke to during that visit. The intrepid reporter continued to garner more awards and more acclaim, and more hats. But in the early 1980s, friends and colleagues began to notice subtle changes in Rowe's behavior. Minor things, such as an unusually harsh assessment of a student in a high school play, eventually gave way to more disturbing incidents like showing up at events on behalf of the Brandon Sun, events she had not been hired to cover. It wasn't long before a dreadful diagnosis was made. The Belle of Brandon had Alzheimer's disease. Her last years were like those of many with that insidious illness. Good days and not so good days, a gradual drifting away from reality, and eventual confinement to a nursing home. When she died in 1995, she was buried beside her husband in the Brandon Cemetery. But there were problems in settling the estate, and Rowe's remaining assets were frozen. So the woman who had traveled and lived the good life, the grande dame who had enjoyed the trappings of a privileged existence, the flamboyant reporter whose name had been synonymous with keeping up appearances, now rests in an overgrown grave marked by nothing more than a tiny plastic placard. No headstone, no flowers, no indication of the graceful, elegant, colorful character that had been. Kaye Rowe would be appalled.